Hey everybody, welcome to Lawyer Live with Matt the Lawyer. I am Matt the Lawyer. It's been a while since I've done one of these videos, and I thought for a little bit of a change, I'll bring back something that we all had to do back in grade school, and that is the book report. Yes, I'm going to do a book report. So today's book report is about this book. It is called Thinking in Bets, written by a woman named Annie Duke. Now, those of you who follow high-level poker may recognize the name Annie Duke. She was a former professional poker player, made something like $4 or $5 million playing poker. But she was also a near Ph.D. student in psychology, and she now consults with companies on tactical and strategic decision-making. So she's actually studied this, and the book is very well documented, lots and lots of resources, a very long suggested reading list at the end, and well sourced. So it is a fairly easy to read book as well. It's not just this crazy academic sort of writing. And one of the things that got Annie Duke started on decision making is one of the interesting facts is that in a typical poker hand, which lasts about 2 minutes, if a player plays the poker hand from start to finish, they'll make about 20 decisions, or one decision every 10 to 12 seconds in a particular game. It is crazy the number of decisions that they make. Now, the nice thing is the book is not really about poker. It's about decision making, and it's about how we can do better making decisions, in part by thinking about decisions from a viewpoint of probability. See, most of us, when we start to think about decisions, or we're starting to think about decisions in the past, we think about things in terms of all or nothing. Either it was definitely going to happen, or it certainly wasn't going to happen. And we get that hindsight bias. We look at things from in the past from the viewpoint of that's how it was always going to happen. And so the decision was irrelevant, or the decision was always going to turn out that way. And it's not really the case. Almost all decisions are based upon the notion of probability. And probability is betting. You're going to bet on something happening one way or the other. Now, the problem, of course, with all of this decision making when you're thinking about things in terms of bets or probabilities is how do you make sure you're preparing yourself for whatever outcome happens? So outcomes can either be positive, negative, or neutral in nature. And we don't necessarily know what's going to happen. The higher probability may be that there is going to be a positive outcome from our decision, and the neutral or negative may be a little bit smaller. So the first incident that Duke talks about in the book actually is a football story. Those of you big football fans, you may remember back in Super Bowl 49, Seattle Seahawks versus the New England Patriots. Towards the end of the game, Seattle Seahawks had the ball on the 3 or 4 yard line, a couple of minutes to go, second down. They had the best running back in the league in the backfield. They had Russell Wilson, who was a good running quarterback. And everybody thought that they were going to hand the ball off to Marshawn Lynch. But they didn't. Pete Carroll, Seattle's coach, called for a pass play. And the ball was intercepted, and New England ended up winning, and Tom Brady got another one of those rings on his finger. So, after the fact, everybody was shredding Carroll. Can't believe they made this decision. What a horrible decision. But was it really? You see, when you sit down and you start to think about it, it's actually not a bad decision, it's a bad outcome. See, Carroll was faced with making a decision in about 10 seconds. NFL has a play clock. So he had to make this decision in about 10, 12 seconds to throw a pass. The pass could have been incomplete. It could have been intercepted like it was. It could have been completed. And there's multiple scenarios that go along with that. And all of them have a probable outcome. And believe it or not, interception was only about 10% of the possible outcome. So what happened? Pete Carroll made what is actually a pretty good decision that just had a bad outcome. And that hindsight bias comes back to bite us in the butt again, because here we are looking backward at a problem. So if you're going to be studying your decision making, one of the things that Duke recommends is you put together a group of people, a mastermind group, any sort of group that you can put together where everybody comes together and you study decisions. And this is the function of what became known as the Heterodox Academy, and allows people to study their decision makings in a way that fosters smarter decision making, better decision making. And having that group of disinterested people, people with diverse backgrounds, can help you improve your decision making processes. But the operative section of Duke's book, or the one that I really enjoyed, is what she referred to as adventures in time travel. So one of the things that happens in poker is that decisions are coming fast and quick, lots of them, and there's immediate consequences. But not all decision making has to be made on the fly like that. A lot of it can be done with a little bit of time, where we can take a step back and we can think a little bit about it. And one of the best tools that Duke recommends is putting regret in front of your decisions rather than regret coming afterwards. Regret is a powerful emotion. It can be debilitating, actually. But if we stop and think, regret after the fact will achieve nothing. You can't change the outcome that's already had. But if you think about regret before you make the decision, it allows you to stop and think. And it's that time that can help us achieve a better outcome by thinking better and making bets about probabilities of our decisions. So if you move regret in front, you can start to employ a number of time travel mechanisms, as Duke calls them. And one of them is applying what she refers to as the 10-10-10 rule. And she co-opted it from another author, but it actually works. If you think about your decision and think about what are the consequences of this decision in 10 minutes, in 10 months, in 10 years, is the consequences of my decision going to matter? And if so, how so? But you can also go backwards. How would I feel about this decision if I made it 10 minutes ago, 10 months ago, or 10 years ago? This is a powerful way for us to control our regret and control the negative feelings that we get when we experience a negative outcome. Remember, the decisions are about probabilities. And sometimes that probability is a low probability that happens to come true. Think about Pete Carroll and the interception in Super Bowl 49. Low probability occurrence, but now that it's happened, has some negative outcome. The other tools that we can start to use is what Duke refers to as scenario planning. And this is exactly what it sounds. We start to imagine what are the scenarios that flow through and flow from some of the decisions that we're making. What are the possible outcomes? A negative outcome, a positive outcome, maybe multiples, maybe a neutral outcome. And we can start to plan for that scenario coming true. This is something that I do with my clients a lot. We provide advice. That's my job as a lawyer, to give advice. And I try to imagine what are the most likely outcomes, what are the most likely consequences of a particular decision. And I try to assign probability. It's a little bit hard to assign probability to some decisions and things like that, but we can assign some probabilities of outcomes so that a client is able to make a decision with knowledge at hand as opposed to just making it blind. We're assuming certain activities, we're assessing certain activities, and we're predicting certain outcomes. Now, obviously, none of those outcomes may always come true, but at least we're in a better position making a decision. So we can plan for a negative outcome. We can plan for a positive or a neutral outcome. And having a plan helps us be more compassionate to ourselves when a decision that we have made results in a negative outcome. So then we get to the last couple of tools. And these are a couple of my favorite ones. They're called backcasting and premortems. So backcasting is a type of scenario planning where we imagine a positive future outcome. and we work our way back through the decision tree that gets us to that outcome and think about what are the decisions that we have to make to achieve that outcome. It's that simple. A pre-mortem is kind of the same thing, but we think about a negative outcome. And we say, okay, here's this negative outcome. What were the decisions, or what are the decisions that we're going to have to make to achieve and result in that negative outcome? And maybe we can avoid that negative outcome by thinking about our decisions now, in advance, so that maybe we can accumulate some particular knowledge, or we can take some steps to avoid being forced into a particular decision. Now, these are some of the tools that Duke talks about. Again, it's a very easy read. It's not hard to read, but it does sort of drop a mental bomb on you every once in a while. You'll be wondering, I'm not quite sure what that is, and then 2 to 3 days later, it's like, oh, I get it now. Largely because you might be faced with that decision, you can start to apply some of these tactics to that decision-making process. The book is available on Amazon, it's available Barnes & Noble, things like that, so you can pretty much get it anywhere now. I think it's still only in hardback, but it's worth every penny of the purchase price. Again, I recommend this book if you are in a position where you have to make decisions, and most business owners are. But even if you're not a business owner, it happens and it works for us in everyday life. And we can start to make decisions a little bit better by employing some of these tools that Duke talks about. In the meantime, this is Matt Johnson signing off. Go out and watch some live soccer. Talk to you later.